like a lot of the consultancies use 2x2 matrices or 3x3 matrices. In this case, it's a little more complex because I think there's three variables. There's an X, Y, and Z axis. So I don't know if a 2x2 matrix is going to cut it. It's probably going to be a cube. A cube is a combination of three 2x2 matrices, one for each axis. So it creates, in a way, 8 different zones, if you will. That's one of the ways that we can define the state of affairs in regards to the trifecta that we've been talking about. One of the legs in this table is the AI integration within the firm. And we're going to define that in many ways. It's data/AI. It has to do with, are your data sources organized? Is your data inventory? Do you have a clear idea of lineage and provenance of the data? Do you have processes in place to scrub the data, clean the data? Do you have safeguards in place to protect the data as it moves through? We've talked about that it's like the blood that moves through the body. Think about it as money. You have to do all the reconciliations. If there are fields missing, it's as if there's dollars missing. So you need to have checks and balances, process checkpoints throughout, because you need to check that the data integrity is maintained. How many times have you not had an Excel spreadsheet that you try to sort, and all of a sudden, if you don't do it the right way, you throw the columns and the rows out of sync? This is exactly the same way. All of this data needs to be maintained in a way that ensures data integrity. You have concepts as data governance. Data scrubbing has to have certain protocols. How are you going to fill in fields that are missing? How are you going to proceed with those rows? Are you going to take them out? Are you going to include? Are you going to ascribe certain amounts in those empty fields? There's a lot of processes that need to take place. AI integration across the firm is not only ensuring the data integrity, but also working the data. In the book Infonomics, the author makes a great point that data is an asset. It's currently not recognized by GAAP standards as an asset. It creates all sorts of problems for valuation of data-rich companies like Facebook and Google, etc. And that's why he says that there's so much disparity between the book value and the IPO value, because it no longer makes any sense. What the market is valuing is all the data and all the insights that come from that data and all the monetization that can happen thanks to that data. So one of the concepts that we're going to use is not just the data, but the refinement of that data in subsequent processes. So think about it as raw materials that get processed into work in progress materials and then finally finished product. It's the same way. Data comes into your firm, and as it moves through the different departments, they enrich the data, they supplement the data, they make it stronger, they make it better, they validate it, they clean it. Data acquires more value as it moves through the process. The second has to do with what we're covering in this course, the amount of technologies, emerging technologies used in conjunction with AI, because AI in a way is an amplifier of all these technologies. How many have you incorporated? And you'll see as we go through that a lot of the companies, especially the tech companies, are now venturing and doing different joint ventures, different investments, buying different startups along these other emerging technology axes. AI integration across the firm, we're just going to keep it simple, high, low. Use of emerging technologies, the same thing, high, low. And the new one has to do with what we mentioned, that the new firm is the value chain. If there's a problem at the restaurant and your dinner reservation has to be pushed, you get sent a message and you say, fine, let's make it 9 o'clock instead of 8. And all of a sudden, the value chain is that the Uber that was going to pick you up gets notified. The digital assistant of your date that you're going to pick up gets notified and has to also validate and confirm. Your alarm clock to tell you what time you have to get into the shower to be ready gets modified. So in order for all these intermediaries that we're going to be between you and the dinner, all these intermediaries get notified. That obviously requires a value chain. That requires APIs. That requires connections. We live in a world of processes. We don't live in a world of individual actors. We always are in a series of steps to accomplish a bigger goal. And so the value chains will be built around the larger processes of our lives, both professionally and personally. The amount of integration in the value chain, high or low, is also going to be one of the indicators in this AI4B matrix. I'm calling it the AI4 business matrix because really at the end of the day, it kind of gives you state of affairs, strategy, data, value chain, connectivity, and obviously use of emerging technology. If you look at all the combinations, you'll get 8 different scenarios. And we're going to talk about this because 2 of the scenarios are just not possible. If you have low data and AI integration across your firm, there's no way you can even venture into high emerging technology integration. In order to do the sophisticated integration of new emerging technologies, it requires that you already have a handle on your data. So you need to be a digitally savvy player in order to enter this new era. And we've already talked about it. Without data, without having your data and digital world in order, you're not going to be able to play with the AI team. You can't be doing crazy things with CRISPR in your firm and you're not even in that field. Like you're a supermarket chain and you say to experiment with vertical farming and genome editing, you're not going to be able to do it if you don't have a robust data infrastructure already in place. So what ends up happening is that really those scenarios get taken out. So you're really left with 6 scenarios. So let's go through them. The most basic one is obviously low low load, low AI data integration across the firm, low use of emerging technologies, and low value chain integration. And that's pretty much what I would consider most firms today. That's the standard of existing firms, pre-AI era, pre-AI hurricane, coming in and shaking up everything with all these emerging technologies. The one that is possible is the scenario where there's high use of a value chain. This is the case of alliance-driven companies that have already tried to do packaging and vertical integration. So sometimes you'll see, for example, in the travel industry, when you see the hotel with the car, with the plane, with the food, those packages already assume a vertical integration upstream and downstream so that you have an end-to-end solution. High value chain connection, those folks, those alliance-driven companies actually have an advantage. It's a good thing. So their action item is to create a data AI infrastructure. Also, for the standard firms, the action item is also to create an AI data infrastructure. They are very much behind in this because they, like I said, they've had 2 decades to do it. So at this point, you don't have that infrastructure, you don't have the governance, you don't have the procedures, you don't have the lineage, the provenance, the integrity, the scrubbing. You don't have all these things going on, and you're still figuring out, should we buy servers or should we use it in the cloud? Oh my God, you are behind.